Sweet. All right, so hopefully by the end of this, everybody will understand what metabolic health is, will understand what PNOE does, and kind of what I'm hoping to do also is to help people understand how we treat metabolic health right now in traditional, what I call insurance-driven healthcare, versus what we can do when we're sort of outside of insurance, which is what I spent half my time in my private practice and then some time in still insurance-driven healthcare, and that's where Vanessa and I know each other. We work together in a, clinic that bills insurance, but my private practice is sort of sits outside of that model. I always like this quote. I had to change it because, Thomas Edison I guess he didn't think there were female physicians back then, probably weren't actually, so I had to change it a little bit. But I love this because this speaks to what I value in healthcare, right? It's about how do we get to root cause and how do we treat through prevention rather than medication sometimes. I'm not a no-med person, but I think there are other ways that we can help people get healthy. Do you mind? So it should be just the down arrow should do it.
Down?
I think so. Perfect. And again, I'm super informal. Please raise your hand, jump in, let's dialogue, let's have conversation. I'm not a stoic, let me do my thing. So please feel comfortable interrupting me. I'll give you just a little bit of my history and my journey. So I actually went to school, my undergraduate degree is in architecture and urban planning. So that was my initial degree. When I finished architecture school, which is this picture, I spent, 9-10 years or so doing construction management is where I was. After I graduated from architecture school, probably about 3 years after that, my sister passed away from metastatic breast cancer. And that was sort of the beginning of me starting to dip my toes into healthcare, right? Gosh, what happened? What does this mean? Could things have been different? Is there family history? So that was sort of my first little dip into healthcare. I started volunteering for Rescue Squad. My mom hated it. She thought it was the worst idea ever because I was sleeping in the firehouse and it was just horrible to her. But so I stayed there and I volunteered and I did that. And then fast forward 4 years, almost to the day, my mom had a heart attack. She retired on a Friday and woke up Saturday morning and had a massive heart attack. And that just rocked my being. And I ran away. I went to the woods with my dog for a little while. I came back and I went back to work, still doing construction, but really started to think about how do I want to spend the rest of my life, right? My mom saved her whole life to retire and was going to retire in South Carolina on a bed and breakfast. She bought a bunch of land and never made it there.
So she died?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So it really made me think, what am I doing, right? So I really started to reevaluate. I eventually went to post-bac because I didn't have anything to do with sciences in my undergraduate degree, went to med school, graduated from med school, and then went on to residency, and I did family medicine. I did a sports fellowship. And then this is probably, 4 or 5 years after residency. And my health, one of the things I want to get through with this too, weight is not a measure of health, right? There's some people who, again, by the definition might be overweight, but they may be more metabolically healthy than someone who is slender, right? So weight does not define our health, but I can tell you this person here was not in great shape, right? I was exhausted, I was fatigued, I was not in a good place, but I was a physician and I was taking care of people, but not taking care of myself. Sometime between here and here, I discovered an organization called the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. They have saved my life. They are my people. Sonia is one of those people. She's boarded in lifestyle medicine. It's the idea that if we get back to what we know, the basics, right? How do we eat? How do we sleep? Are we moving? Are we moving enough? Are we managing our stress? Are we engaging in risky substances? You can radically change your life, and that's what I did. COVID happened in here as well. And this is me about 2 years ago where I ran my first marathon in Eugene at just before my 50th birthday. This is Christy Collell. She's a residency classmate of mine. She'd seen me online running and posting things, and she said, let's do Eugene. And before I could say no, I registered and paid, and then I had to train. So then we trained and we ran Eugene together. So that's been my walk. Lifestyle medicine is where I feel I've been called to do. That's what I love. I'm passionate about it. I'm passionate about prevention and helping people live a healthy life. So that's been kind of my walk. These are the 3 women that fuel my what I do. This is my mother, Sonia. This is my grandmother who is now passed away, Hyacinth, and then this is my sister, Nina. All three have gone. They've passed away, but they are the reason I do what I do, because I don't want anyone to, if I can help it, help one person who helps another person, save somebody's mother, sister, grandmother, brother, uncle, then I can go to bed at night saying that I've done what I feel like, whatever God you believe in has allowed me the time to do. So again, it's not about, you know, what's on the stone, but it's what we do with the lives of others. So go ahead and pass on. So some of the things that I hope I can accomplish tonight, we'll go through what's metabolic health. Again, how do we do it in insurance-driven healthcare? And then what I think we should be focusing on and what I try to focus on in my direct primary care space. Some of the things that are available to us now, labs that we can do, what's considered a new vital sign by the American Heart Association, and then we'll talk about metabolic testing as well. And then there's some goodies that I'll give away too. All right. So just quickly, and I probably already had spoiler alert, right? Does having a healthy weight mean you're metabolically healthy? No, definitely not. And we'll see why that pans out. And then this is insurance-driven healthcare, right? You go into your primary doc at least once a year, hopefully. Does everyone have a PCP? Yeah? Wow, you guys are above the board. Most people don't these days. When was the last time you saw your PCP though? That's the other thing, right? It's like you can't even get into them half the time. But hopefully at least annually, somebody's taking a look at you. You get some labs if you're on medication. But does that necessarily prevent disease? Does that necessarily make us healthy? It doesn't, right? So hopefully some of the stuff we go through today, the benefit of this will help us understand how we can change our health. So metabolic health, it's all about how your body processes the food you eat, right? So you take in something, right? And that's converted to energy. How you take in and exhale carbon dioxide, that's all converted to energy, which is considered ATP. And that's as well to sort of just do the normal functions of your body, right? So that is metabolic health. How efficiently you do that task defines your metabolic health. The risk or consequences, again, and the way we define it is really the absence of disease, right? So we say somebody is metabolically healthy if they have a normal blood pressure, if they have a normal cholesterol panel, if they have normal BMI, so it's the absence of those things that defines metabolic health, again, within insurance-driven healthcare. And the reason is, you know, studies and research has shown that if you have diabetes or you have high blood pressure or high cholesterol or you're carrying more weight than, you know, is considered normal, then that increases your risk of heart disease, heart attack, stroke, all those things. So the goal is, again, insurance-driven, is we sort of treat to those values. We treat to get you to a normal blood pressure. We treat to get you to a normal cholesterol. You can go ahead. And these are sort of the measures that we typically use to say, are we doing a good job keeping somebody metabolically healthy? Are we lowering your risk of heart disease and stroke and diabetes? We treat to a blood pressure typically of under 130 over 80. Triglycerides are less than 50. This is one of your cholesterol numbers. The American Heart Association actually says we should probably be treating lower to a level of 100, but the vast majority of docs will treat to 150. Your HDL, again, the goal is really to get people upwards of 60, but again, most of the labs and most people are treating men over 50, men over 40, women over 50. Your HDL is considered your good cholesterol or your protective lipoprotein, so we want that a little bit high. Fasting glucose, we want that under 100, again, to define metabolic health. And again, I'm a little bit different. I don't know if Vanessa hears me talking about fasting glucose, because I think it's important to trend these things, right? I mean, I watch people and if I see somebody who a year ago, their fasting was 70 or 80 and now they're coming back and now it's 90 or 95, they're already developing insulin resistance. But traditional healthcare, we can't code that, right? We have to wait till they're pre-diabetic or they're diabetic. But if we watch these numbers over time, we can already see disease developing. So I tend to sort of watch things and trend them and start having these really big conversations before people hit a diagnostic threshold. And then here are the other labs, you know, that we sort of treat to, because if we do this, then we say, oh, you're metabolically healthy, we've done a good thing, we can check the box and we can meet our quality measures in insurance-driven healthcare. Reason is, we know this is a huge risk, right? 2 times more if you're diabetic. Women are more at risk, even more so when we are perimenopausal and menopausal because of the loss of estrogen. So that's a whole nother lecture, which I would love to give at some point, but I don't know if there's enough women that really want to hear me talk about that. But anyway.
Yes, there is.
Yes? All right, we can do that. There is a whole other risk factor when it comes to women. Okay, go ahead. So how are we doing, right? We spend all this time, we do the labs, we bring you in, we get your labs, we check your blood pressure, we do all your vitals. So how are we doing? Well, 1 in 8 adults have optimal metabolic health. That's really poor. I think that's poor for all the effort we give in healthcare and all the money we spend in healthcare. Only 1 in 8 is actually metabolically healthy. And weight doesn't necessarily mean that you're healthy either, right? This study was ran from 2009 to 16. I think it had about 8,700 people in it. They actually used a blood pressure measure of 120 over 80. So it was a slightly more stringent blood pressure. And those are the statistics from that. So we're really not doing a great job, even with those measures that we use. So what's the overall burden? 659,000 are dying every year from heart disease. That's almost 900 jumbo jets falling out of the sky. That's crazy. Isn't that crazy?
That's crazy.
900 jumbo jets falling out of the sky every year. That's how many people are dying of heart disease. This is almost 200. Like, we should be like, what is going on, right? So anyway, we are not doing a great job. Go ahead. So this, again, in my mind, my personal opinion, I think we can do better for people, right, in healthcare. So this is kind of where I think we need to be. Inflammation, we know, is a huge risk factor for disease. Cortisol, oxidative stress. Have people heard these terms? Cortisol, yeah, right? Huge risk factor. We need to start talking more about endothelial health, right? What does the intima, the inside of your vessel look like? Do you have labs that make you at risk for those things? Although again, your cholesterol is normal, but there are other labs we can be looking at that really says, oh gosh, maybe you're at higher risk. You should be in a different bucket. We should be looking at you a little bit differently. Heart rate variability. Does anybody track their heart rate variability? Yes. I love it. I have an Oura ring. I think it's the greatest thing. I wish I had stock in this thing. It's awesome. Cardiorespiratory fitness. The American Heart Association has some opinions about that. That's what this allows us to do. Metabolic flexibility, we'll go through that. That's what PNOE allows us to do. And then lifestyle, which I could talk about ad nauseum, but this is where I think we need to spend our time in healthcare, because this is what I believe is actually gonna stop all those jumbo jets falling out of the sky, or at least lessen those numbers a little bit. Okay. Any questions? I know I talk fast, so please interrupt me. So what are some precursors to disease that I think is worthwhile, at least people knowing about, and then having the conversation with your regular doc and seeing, gosh, are these things that can they order? And I say can because insurance really dictates what we can and can't order. And then what's the cost, right? So that can be a bit cost prohibitive within insurance. So high sensitivity CRP, it's an inflammatory marker, but it's specific for cardiac disease. I personally think we should be running that on everybody, right? I'm partial again because my mom suffered a massive cardiac arrest in her 50s. So I think everyone should get a high sensitivity CRP. And then there's lipoprotein A. There was an article that I literally just came out July 2nd, where a cardiologist and researcher says that we should be getting lipoprotein A on people because it's not just a risk, it is the cause of atherosclerotic disease. It's the cause of plaque in our arteries. So someone like me, where my mom dies in her 50s of heart disease, that's a huge genetic risk. Those people should be getting lipoprotein A, right? The question is, can we really get this in insurance-driven healthcare? Again, this article, the cardiologist says it's too expensive, so insurance won't cover it. I can get this lab in direct primary care for, I think, $11.
These are lab tests that you get, okay.
Yep. Homocysteine is another one, has a lot to do with nitric oxide, which allows our blood vessels to relax. So the job of nitric oxide is to control our blood pressure. It's sort of that vagal tone. You can go ahead and go to the next one, please. So there's some testing you can do. There's salivary sticks to really see what your nitric oxide level is. Here's another lipoprotein that we can test for, and then myeloperoxidase. All of these are sort of inflammatory markers specific to cardiac and vessel health, specific to what is that endothelial lining looking like? Is that causing an increased risk? Okay. And then heart rate variability. So heart rate variability is sort of it's this dance between your sympathetic system and your parasympathetic system. So sympathetic is kind of that fight or flight, right? You can be chased by a bear. It's like, holy moly, everything's on fire. You gotta get the heck out of there. That creates a high frequency when it comes to your heart rate. And then parasympathetic, rest and digest, kind of the lower blood pressure, that's a low frequency. So our heartbeat doesn't go on a metronome. So it's not like a perfect beat, beat, beat. There's some variation between the beat. So that variation, and it's in milliseconds, can get converted to a frequency. And then it's the relationship between your parasympathetic and your sympathetic, and that gives us our overall heart rate variability. And we want to be parasympathetic dominant, because again, that's more of a relaxed vascular tone, leads to better blood pressure, leads to better vascular health, those sorts of things. So watching our heart rate variability, getting a good measure here, and then keeping track of it. I know for me, my Oura ring is huge. I can tell if I'm overtraining, did I get enough sleep, my heart rate variability will bounce depending on all of those things. So I think this is a great, we should be talking more about heart rate variability.
What's an Oura ring?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. So it's this wonderful little thing, and it's got a little sensor in it. So it does sleep, it does heart rate variability, temperature, what else? Steps, thank you.
Calories burned.
Yeah.
All sorts of stuff.
It's pretty amazing. It comes with an app. Yeah.
Because it's smaller Apple Watch.
Oh, it's so much better though. Because I really wanted something, I got it initially for sleep. Because again, this whole journey of mine, right? I did nutrition first, and then I got to the point where I could start exercising. But my sleep was trash, and I couldn't wear my watch when I slept, so I was having a hard time figuring out how do I keep. So that's where I settled on the Oura ring. I think it's fantastic.
So it measures like your depth of like your
Oh, yeah.
quality.
Remind me, I'll pull up the app. Yeah.
Okay.
How much time are you spending in REM? How long is it taking for you to go to sleep? Your sleep latency. How much time you spend in deep. I mean, it's amazing. You can get lost in the data. It's pretty cool. Yeah. Okay. So the American Heart Association has come out and said that VO2 max should be the new vital sign, because it's just that important for our mortality, for our health, that we should be really talking about and tracking our VO2 max. And they call it cardiorespiratory fitness. And based on where you are, that defines your risk, right? Above 8 METs or metabolic equivalents, that's considered high, normal or low risk for cardiovascular disease. If you're floating in the less than 5, then that's a high risk category. So, but most people are not getting this done. Now we have the ability to do that with something super easy and portable. Okay. Same article, so they're saying cardiovascular fitness should be used as a risk calculator for first heart attacks. So I put this in here because this is what we do right now. So when we say, okay, what's your risk of having a significant cardiac event, we use a calculator. It's only applicable between 40 and 79. So if you're less than 40, we've got nothing for you. We can't really risk stratify you, because I guess maybe heart attacks don't happen under 40. That's a satire. They definitely do. But we can't use the calculator because it's not validated under 40. And basically we say, okay, are you diabetic? So again, presence of disease. What's your sex? Are you a smoker? Is your total cholesterol controlled under 200? Is your HDL at least 60 or better? What's your top number to your blood pressure? And then are you being treated for blood pressure? And then what's your race? And then based on that, you're given a score that says, you know, less than 5, 5 to 7, somewhere between 17 and then over 20 is high risk. But as you can imagine, even if, let's say, your cholesterol is 150, that's normal. But again, is that person really healthy? So that's my big thing, is we need to start digging a little bit deeper. And this allows us to do that a little bit better. Go ahead, switch. So let's talk about how do we test and what's PNOE. So again, the metabolic testing is about, you know, how much O2 are we bringing in? How much C2 are we letting out? What's our volume of air that we can take in at any given moment? And we combine that with our heart rate to sort of give us data. And then that data can then be used to extrapolate heart function, respiratory function, cellular health, those sorts of things. The test, the way this is done, metabolic testing has been around over 100 years. And again, American Heart Association says everyone should be doing this at least annually. So this is metabolic testing, or, you know, back in the 1900s. And then we got a little bit better, but still pretty labor intensive. And now we've got PNOE that fits in a black box, that's portable, it's non-invasive, super easy to use. And again, we use the data, the O2, your oxygen, your CO2, and your flow rate combined with the heart rate. You wear a heart rate monitor while the test is being done. That's the resting test. And then if you do an active test, then you're actually, you know, doing some level of activity, whether it's on a bike or a treadmill, whatever you can tolerate. And then there's calculation that occurs, and we're able to then put out these 23 biomarkers. These allow us to then push a little bit further and say, okay, based on where you are against normal values, how do we sort of maximize your health, and what are you at risk for? So if you go to the next one, please, Reed.
Is this like a stress test?
A little bit different. So stress test is, you can either do what's called a pharmacological stress test, where you get medication and that gets the heart rate going, or you do the running one, exercise stress test. What that does is it's just looking at how well does your heart pump, what's the volume of blood being ejected out of the heart, what's the motion of the walls of the heart look like, what are the chamber sizes, do you have any stenosis, narrowing, tightening of your valves, or do you have any what's called regurg, where even when it's closed it's still like swooshing blood in a different direction. So it's really just a heart test. You run, they do an EKG, then they lay you down and do an ultrasound, and then that's how we get the picture. So that's a stress test. What that doesn't do is, well, how well do you burn fat, right? Are you metabolically efficient? What's your resting metabolic rate? What's your respiratory function like? It doesn't test any of that. It's just purely a picture of the heart. An electrical one with the EKG, and then the ultrasound gives you a physical picture. So we get these 23 points, and then each one kind of, we can get a little bit deeper and say, okay, who's at risk and why? So most of the fat burning, your crossover, and we'll go into a little bit more detail, your metabolic rate, all of that tells us what's your cellular health, and we know that's what carries that risk for diabetes or metabolic syndrome. So that helps us narrow that down. And then all of the heart rate variability, and then the O2 and CO2 comes over and says, okay, what's your cardiorespiratory fitness, your biological age, which we get to by doing a VO2 max, which we need an exercise test for. That is a very good predictor for longevity. VO2 max is also, again, what the American Heart Association says is the best predictor for how well you will live and how long you will live, is your VO2 max. And then down in here we can talk about cognitive health, and how that relates to your ability to oxygenate and to get out CO2. that leads to some brain health. And then again, kind of this, we really want to have more of a parasympathetic dominant system, because an overactive can lead to sort of stress, again, cortisol, inflammation, right? Those are the big ones. Go ahead, switch. So these are just some questions that I've gotten, right? Both as a family doc, when I was doing sports medicine, now doing more lifestyle medicine. You know, people they want to know, how do I get healthy? What should I be doing? And now I think we're getting a little bit closer to being able to give people really good answers, not just based on a calculator, but really good, specific, personalized answers. So I'm excited to be able to have a better answer for people sometimes. Go ahead. So let's talk about the resting test and the active test just a little bit. So the resting test, we can get your metabolic rate. Again, I keep bringing up this fat burning. There's a couple slides a little bit later, so I'll talk about that a little bit more. How flexible you are with your fat burning. We can extrapolate your biological age, but we can't give it a true one, because it really needs to be an active test to do your biological age. Do you guys know the difference between your biological and your chronological age? Yeah, you got some notes in yes. So your chronology is just what it is, right? So I'm 52, I think. 52, I think 52. So that's my chronological age. Then you have your biological age. That's like, again, how healthy you are, right? What's your metabolic health? How well is your cellular function? How well is your heart working? Those sorts of things. So there's that gap in between. Hopefully your biological age is younger than your chronological age if you're, really dialed in. But then some people sometimes have a biological age older than their chronological age, right? So this allows us to get to that level of detail. Yeah.
Does it tell you what your biological age is?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it does?
Yeah. Based on your VO2 max. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
It can do that. Yeah. Yep. So that piece you'll get when you do an active test. There's a really cool thing called your crossover rate. We'll talk about that a little bit more. That requires an active test. This is 10 minutes. You put on the Pinoy, you sit or lie down for 10 minutes. That's all you do for the resting test. 10 minutes, that's it. This, it's about 20 minutes, right? Because you gotta do a little warm up, and then we kind of take you through some paces, right? Zone 1, zone 2, a little bit more effort, a little bit more effort, a little bit more effort, and then you do a cool down at the end. So this is about a 20-minute test. So this is not, hours at a cath lab, you know what I mean? It's 20 minutes or 10 minutes, and we can radically alter people's health and the information that they have to change their outcomes. So it's not an exhaustive thing that we're trying to do. So VO2 max, and this is what it ends up looking like, Paula. So when you get the report, and you get a detailed report, what it ends up doing is it shows your chronologic age, and then again, based on your VO2 max, which is how well are you able to use oxygen for exercise, right? That's what defines your VO2 max. It can sort of calculate what your biological age against your chronological age. And again, we know that the healthier or higher your VO2 max, the healthier you are, the less risk for disease, the less dollars you spend in healthcare, the whole thing. So VO2 max is huge. It's huge when it comes to health.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Is there any variability when you do the test during time of day? If I did the test in the morning, or if I did the test a month from now, there would be a lot of variability, or is it pretty accurate given a certain time frame?
We always want people to be fasting, so it's generally always done in the morning, right? Unless someone's really doing a pretty significant time-restricted eating pattern. So from that perspective, yes, it would be different if it's not a fasting test. So both the resting and the active should be fasting. The resting, we want to fast for at least 8 hours, and then no strenuous activity. The active, you can fast a little bit less, but still you don't want to empty the tank the night before. So you want to be pretty kind of low key the day before, but both should be fasting because it'll change your fat burning, it'll change some of your metabolic data if it's not fasting. You really want it to be a fasted state. So that's probably about the only variability.
And what about like certain disease states like asthma or
Mhm.
something that would interfere with that test?
Yeah.
Or even anemia or some types of
That's
things?
awesome, yeah. So I think what you'll see is then your respiratory numbers will be significantly decreased.
Mhm.
So there's a gentleman who had pulmonary fibrosis and had a lung resected, and he's used PNOE and specific breathing exercises to improve the function of the one lung that he has. So you will see a decline in their respiratory ability, but then you can actively target that, right, with the right exercise or the right breathing, so you can improve somebody's respiratory function.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can actually use PNOE to do a spirometry, right? So I
Yeah.
mean that's basically right. We're just doing gas exchange, and the amount that you're pushing out and inhaling is what it's measuring. Yeah. And that's a great question about anemia, right? So I think it's important to have some baseline labs on people, right? To see, are you anemic, are you iron deficient without anemia? Because that'll certainly change your VO2 max.
Or even like I have alpha thalassemia minor, so
yeah.
that, I have
For sure.
very small blood cells. So
Yeah.
that's gonna change,
For sure.
my reading for
Yeah,
sure,
yeah.
I would think.
Yeah, I would think so. It'd be interesting to see, could we, what would be unique about improving your VO2 max, right?
Right.
In spite of the thalassemia,
Yeah,
or
it's
sickle
hard.
cell, right? Or even
Yeah.
sickle, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, right, I mean, there's not much you can change aside from getting a blood transfusion or.
But what I mean is your
No.
ability, we can't change your red cells,
Right,
but the question is, can we change your efficiency,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
I mean, if you can take somebody with one lung and improve their function, right? Or same way you take somebody who has a heart attack, right, and has, let's say, 50% heart function,
yeah,
through cardiac rehab, you can get their heart function up.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's true.
So I mean, you can still have, sickling or thalassemia and still improve the ability of those cells to oxygenate and carry oxygen for you, and therefore improve your outcomes, your quality, and what you can do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, it's interesting, cause I never thought that could be actually improved.
Yeah.
Just because,
Yeah.
my cells are what they are, I
Sure.
can't change that, and I
Sure.
can't change how much oxygen can, how much hemoglobin can,
Yeah.
attach that oxygen, so that's kind of interesting to me
Yeah.
that it's possible.
Yeah.
I have a
Um,
question.
yeah.
So if I take that test in let's say January, when I'm more sedentary,
Mhm.
and then I take it in July when I've been biking and hiking, and will my test results be different
probably.
depending on my exercise?
Sure. Probably.
So do you wanna take it at a particular time of year, when you're more sedentary or when you're more active?
Well, I think the idea, right, is that you want to take this test to figure out who is Paula at her baseline, right? The idea is not to trick the test, right? The idea is to say, okay, who are you at your baseline? Your normal life, what do you do normally? What's your metabolic health? And then you use that information to say, okay, if your goal is longevity, right? Let's just throw that out. Let's say that's your goal. So we know for longevity, the thing is maintaining a healthy weight, maintaining your VO2 max, maintaining your cognitive function, right? So those are the data points we're looking at when we do a test like this. And we say, okay, if you're 80% here, 60% here, 70% here, now let's give you a personalized plan to bring those as close to 100% as we can. And then you do that, and then you retest yourself in 3 months. And we see, are we moving that needle? Are we improving your outcomes? Are we making you healthier? So that's the goal of this, right? So sure.
You do it over time, you
For sure, you
retest.
retest, yes. Because the goal is to use this to improve. Yeah. I know you got a boogie. Do you need a boogie? Don't feel bad.
It's super exciting. I've been texting her. I think my daughter.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay.
Yeah, but so the goal is to retest, right? You see where you are. These are the things that would be recommended: nutrition, exercise, breathing, postural stuff. There's a colleague of mine that does chiro, whatever the prescription is, because we know we can change certain physiology, and then we retest you in 3 months. So respiratory exchange. So one thing you'll get from the resting test is, so when we oxidize fat, there's a certain amount of CO2 produced, which is different when we oxidize carbohydrates. So when we're fasting and we do this resting test, we can then extrapolate, okay, are we a primary fat burner or are we a primary carb burner? And there's a percentage in there, right? So are you 80% fat, 20% carbs? Are you 20% fat and 80% carbs, or some variation in there? It is healthier to be a primary fat burner. That is just gonna be a more metabolically healthy and more efficient pattern. So we can get that information, and then we can do exercise and nutrition that fits, right? We can design a nutrition program that fits your macronutrient profile based on where you are. And then ultimately, again, the goal is to get people to be more of a fat burner. So that's why we say, okay, these are the things that we would recommend, and let's retest you. And are you improving in your fat burning efficiency? So that's one of the data points that we get, and this can be done just with the resting test, which I think is just amazing. And then there's this thing called metabolic flexibility. So this is this crossover point. At some point, we flip, right? Our fat burning drops off, and then our carb takes off, right? Because we've just expended whatever fat we've got. This crossover point is huge when it comes to how metabolically healthy you are, because you want that to be as far out as possible. There's some people who their crossover points in zone 1. Those are probably people with diabetes, right? Those sorts of things. So the idea is, can we improve your health and your fitness and push your crossover point out further so that you're more metabolically flexible, is the idea. This also allows us to really pinpoint where your zone training is. Have you guys heard about zone 2 training? It's like all the rage, right? The problem is right now we get to zone 2 by calculation, right? The easy one is 220 minus your age, and then you do a percentage. Well, all of the stuff has been done on white males. I'm about as far from a white male as you can get, right? So is my zone 2 really my zone 2? I don't know. But this tells me exactly where my zone 2 is. And it also tells me where my crossover is, right? So I may be able to actually still burn fat well into my zone 3, or maybe I'm way back here. So that's, I get so excited. I don't know if you guys get excited about it, but this is just amazing, right? We've never had that information before. Yeah.
Have you done it?
I haven't done my active. It is scheduled for Friday morning. So I'll come in with my report, Steve. I'll bring my report to you. We'll have coffee and I'll bring my report. I've done the resting, but I haven't done the active yet. Yeah. So this to me is just amazing. From a performance standpoint, this is hugely important. Maintaining our weight, this is hugely important, right? Again, where I am in my chronology, my estrogen, my metabolism, this is hugely important, right? All of that stuff, it's so important. Longevity, this is important, right? I mean, this is huge, so I get pumped. And then this is a big one with longevity as well. So it's postulated that up to 20% of us are hyperventilators. And that's not like, you're not gonna notice it. It's like this imperceptible, they're not completely exhaling all their CO2. So what that means is when you are a CO2 retainer, that changes, again, your cognitive function. So that has some effect, right? Longer term, right? Dementia, those sorts of things. So seeing where people land with their breathing is huge. And can we change that? Can we improve the ability to get out all that CO2? Your breath, breathing from your belly as opposed to up here, right? Have you seen people breathe with it? They don't come from here. So then their core, your back, right? As a chiro, I'm sure you see people with a ton of back pain. What's their respiratory function like? What's their core? That sort of stuff. So it plays into a lot of different things. All right, let's just run through a couple. Are we good on time? Is everybody okay? Yeah? We're good? Okay, we'll run through a couple little patient scenarios. All right, so we've got a male, mid-50s. So his history is he has erectile dysfunction. He's got elevated blood sugar, normal lipid panel, but he's on the high side of normal, right? So his total cholesterol is on the high side. His LDL is on the high side. Does everybody know LDL? Yeah, okay, so that's the one that we watch, causes plaque and all of that. It's got a normal HDL, so it's high, so that's good. His BMI is 30, so he's considered overweight. Does a desk job, but he works out 3 days a week. So the things that I see when I see this, First thing is erectile dysfunction, to me, should be like a glaring red flag, because that already means he's got vascular disease, right? He's got vascular disease. Guarantee it. But I tell you what, you see anybody, it's like, oh, here's your sildenafil. But nobody's talking about it. Holy red flag, this guy's got vascular disease. So that's the first thing I see. Elevated blood sugar. He's not diabetic, he's not pre-diabetic, so we don't have a code yet. So we don't really know what to do with that. So likely he's gonna get a conversation, oh, you should probably lose a little bit of weight, right? Oh, go home, exercise more, eat better, and lose some weight. And then what else could we be doing? So first thing is, he's got vascular disease. So what's his endothelial look like? Like, what's his inflammatory state? That high sensitivity CRP. Let's look at those things a little bit more. I would get all into his lifestyle. What do you eat? You know, all of that. Because we know we can move his cholesterol with nutrition, for sure, right? So all in his lifestyle. Is he consuming alcohol? Is he a smoker? And then I would have a higher sort of, am I gonna give him any kind of supplements, again, to treat that endothelial health? And then the PNOE, doing his resting, doing that respiratory efficiency, seeing where his fat burning is, and then his VO2 max, and then retest him in 3 months and see if we're moving the needle, right? We'll do the next one. So female, mid-40s, so probably perimenopausal, right? Mid to late 40s, maybe. She's pre-diabetic. Her triglycerides to HDL ratio is above 2, so that already puts her at high risk for metabolic syndrome. Her waist circumference is 36. She doesn't sleep well. She endorses some depression, and she loves cardio. So that's kind of her regular exercise routine is cardio. So a couple things I would jump out here. Sleep apnea looks different in women. So women typically don't snore, but we have mood disorders. So that's my first thought. I'm like, okay, poor sleeper, maybe a little overweight, and she's got depression. Should we be looking at a sleep study? Right? Just a thought. But those are things that I would be thinking about. Again, inflammatory markers, her endothelial lab, she's already got metabolic syndrome or is high risk for it. She's pre-diabetic and her ratio is above 2. And then we're doing PNOE again, getting her metabolic rate. Where's that crossover point for her? And can we move that a little bit further out in her training? You know, zone 3, zone 4, zone 3 probably, and then her VO2 max. And then we give her nutrition and exercise, really emphasizing resistance training. Improving her muscle mass is going to be helpful. Again, if she's perimenopausal, her estrogen is slowly declining, so muscle mass is helpful in that regard. And then we retest her in 3 months. It'd be really nice to use this with a body comp thing too, right? To be able to really assess somebody's body comp. That would be the other thing. But all right, and then I think we got one more. So female in her 50s. She's got normal labs, she's a non-smoker, loves to run, she's got a family history of early cardiac death, and she really wants to know how can she improve her performance and live a long, vital life. So menopausal, because of that family history, again, those endothelial labs, potentially some supplements, nitric oxide, those sorts of things. And then doing PNOE for a lot of the other things we already talk about, right? Her metabolic flexibility, breathing, again, for that CO2, make sure she's not retaining any CO2 for her long-term brain health. What's her biological age? Are we younger than 50 or are we 52? And then her VO2 max. Again, muscle mass is gonna be huge, and then retesting in 3 months. And I think that might be it. So hopefully I answered all those questions. And then I think I hammered it home. Yeah, perfect. I beat that horse to death. Go ahead. So initially I had said I would do a resting test for everybody. And the more I dug into this, I think everyone should do an active too. So I'm gonna give everybody a free and an active, or a resting and an active, okay? And you'll get a full nutrition and a full consultation. So I have at least 10. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Boom, there we go. Everybody gets one. Alrighty? So please make sure you fill that out. That's how I will get a hold of you if you want it. If you don't, just put a little tick or something by your name and I'll skip you. But if you're interested, make sure I have a good email and a cell phone for you, please. I will reach out to you and we'll get these scheduled. It's just because it's fasting, we just gotta figure out, everybody's schedule. And you'll get a full report, you'll meet with the metabolic specialist, they'll go through your report. There's an app that you get that has your report in it. Your exercise program will be in there, your nutrition will be in there. You specify, I'm vegan, I love red meat, I hate cashews, I hate egg, whatever. And then the nutritionist will design a nutrition program for you, all right? And then you ask me whatever questions and then we recheck in 3 months if you're interested, okay? If there's anybody in your family, friends, you're like, oh my gosh, this was amazing, yes. So phone number, email, everything's here. Just have them reach out to me for the next couple days. They can get 20% off, okay? Any questions?
So who's the nutritionist? There's a nutritionist that's involved?
From Pinoy. So Pinoy does it.
Is this
The company.
Oh, it's a company,
Mhm.
and then they do this all online? with
No,
you?
so I do the test. So you do the test with me.
Right,
And then the data goes to them. They generate the report. They have the RD on staff, the registered dietitian on staff with them,
so,
and they have the metabolic expert.
so
on
this
staff.
is a company that does it, the Pinoy thing.
So yes, so
It's a company that does it. Where are they located?
they are. That is a great question. I think they're in Chicago, maybe. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So they're the one that designed this device that does the metabolic testing, but I do the test with the individuals. Yeah, but using their device. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Is this something new? Has it been
Relatively.
around?
Pinoy's been around for a few years now. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh, you're welcome. You're very, very welcome.
Oh, interesting.
If anybody wants to pick this apart, I can show people how this works, show it to you if you're interested. If not, I know it's late, so.
Is it stuff that hooks up to you?
Yeah, so,
You breathe into it?
yeah.
Hi.
It's great to see
It
you.
was fantastic.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Likewise, take care.
So the way it works is, so it's a single use. I've used this, so that's why it's already open, but it's a single use filter, that gets attached. Oh, here, I'll put it all together for you.
So is this something that you're offering to patients that first come to you to do this test first?
Yeah, so what, again, in my clinical practice, my direct primary care practice, I will do a resting test on everybody. That's my goal, is to do, everyone gets a resting test. If they want to pursue the active, again, my patients get a 20% discount, just being part of my clinical practice, yeah. And then, if there are people who are like, oh, I like my PCP, I don't need a primary doc, but I just wanna do this, then they can just do this as well. And then I can work with them with just this. So it's really 2 different ways.
Do you work with the primary care docs too? If you have, if I was a patient of yours and then had my own PCP, on the medical side?
Yeah.
Do you guys kind of communicate with each other to
I would love to. I don't have a problem communicating.
I see where you're going with that.
I love communication.
No, I mean, I know, I'm guessing it would be a little difficult with the continuity of care,
Yeah,
when
yeah.
you have like maybe 2 primary care physicians,
Sure.
kind of
Yeah.
having 2 different angles of approaching a
Yeah,
certain
yeah,
thing,
yeah.
but,
So I mean, if you love your PCP and they know you and you can get to them
yeah,
and you get good care, I would say stick with your PCP,
yeah,
right? And if this interests you, we can just do this,
Yeah.
right? And we can get that data to your PCP. I don't know if they would know what to do with it, but
yeah.
then you have this information to sort of augment your care.
Have you found that the younger docs are more receptive to this than maybe the older ones? Like, are you finding that medical schools are teaching a little bit more about
Not
this?
this,
Not at all?
no, not this. I think lifestyle medicine might be more in that boat,
Yeah.
right? Where lifestyle medicine, because the ACLM, the American College, is
Yeah,
actually actively reaching down into residencies and that kind of thing.
yeah,
But this, I haven't seen this talked about yet.
okay.
But I wouldn't be surprised if that's coming, yeah.
I would think think so.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, a while ago, classical medicine, we never talked about functional
Yeah,
medicine.
for sure.
And now they talk
For
about
sure.
functional medicine, so
For sure.
I think it's coming around.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so the way this goes together is this all goes like this. This gets attached, like so. This goes into this box. So this is the box that really does the power. This is all where all the, you probably know, right? You're like, oh yeah, this is exactly, this is where all the and this is what sort of senses O2, CO2, the flow, the volume,
So
the
you
rate
breathe
you breathe.
into that and,
So this goes on your head.
oh, the blue end
Yep, so this,
goes in around your
correct.
face.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So essentially
Uh-huh. Cool.
sits.
So you blow into that and then it measures your breath. Or
Correct.
something about
Yep.
your breathing.
Yep, and this goes over your head.
You just get one shot with the breath, or you do a series of
So you
them?
do 10 minutes.
Oh,
So the
okay.
resting is 10 minutes and you just lay there for 10 minutes and you breathe whatever your normal breath is, right? And then it does its business. And then again, when you exercise, there's a pack. So this goes in the pack, you wear this like a backpack. And then you kind of bike. I would tell people to bike. I mean, even someone who's a proficient runner, I think it'd be challenging to, so I would test everybody on a bike. Yeah.
So if I come in to do this at your office, then I would first do the resting thing.
Mhm.
And then, like, you have to lie down, or you just sit in a chair?
Either, whatever you're more comfortable with.
Do you have a place to lie down?
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then do you have a bike where somebody?
So the active, we would do someplace else. So likely for the combo, because we can do it all in one fell swoop, we
Yeah.
would do that elsewhere. So there's likely a PT. I was hoping that Lifetime would let me test, but I don't think they're gonna let me. Yeah.
Oh.
So there's a local physical therapist, or I may even talk to Guillermo and see if I can use his facility.
For a bike?
Yeah.
He might have a bike.
I know he does. Yeah. 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 I should stop recording. No, I'm just kidding.
Sienna, do you have case studies where people did the testing and then followed their personalized prescription and then retested and saw improvement? I mean, can we change our fat burning
Yeah.
ability
Yeah.
through personalized exercise and nutrition
Yeah.
prescriptions?
I mean, the one person I know is this pulmonary fibrosis guy, right? Pinoy has some YouTube where they've sort of followed people, so they do. I'll have to dig a little bit more into like getting more meaty information, yeah, but I can dig into that for you, yeah.
At what age do you recommend to start these kind of tests?
So it's only really validated 18 and above. Yeah, it's not validated for much younger than that. Yeah.
When you get a full history from your patients, can you pretty much predict what kind of results you're gonna get when you do the PNOE?
Well, I'll tell you, I was so when I did the resting, I was surprised. So my lung function is really, really good. I got like 100% on all of them. My heart function was not, which was surprising to me.
Okay.
So I've got some work to do.
But yeah, I mean, you know all of your other labs
Yeah.
that you get from like a traditional
Yep.
doc,
Yeah.
and then that
Yeah.
part just didn't align.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is that genetic from your?
Well, so exactly, maybe it is, right? So believe me, I've got all the labs and I'm gonna order them myself. Because nobody in traditional healthcare is gonna order them, so I'll just order it myself. And I can get it cheaper when I do it myself anyway than I can if I run it through insurance, so.
So you can just check, so you do it but if it's genetic, okay, you can still change it.
So like, let's say I did a lipoprotein A on me, right? And it's high, that's genetic. I don't know if I can change my lipoprotein A, right? But I'm gonna do everything else that I can change, right? My nutrition, my exercise, my
So you just
do
try
all
things.
my stuff.
You just try things to see if you can change it, right?
Well, let me back up 1 second. So there's genetic predilection for things, right? So my mom had a really early heart attack. My sister had breast cancer. So we can have a genetic predisposition for something. Then there's something called epigenetics, which means based on our lifestyle, we can turn on or off a gene's predilection, right? So there is an opportunity with lifestyle to sort of change the expression of my genes. It's still there, I still have that genetic predisposition, but I can change the expression based on the choices that I make. Yeah. So even if I have, again, heart disease in my family and cancer in my family, the choices that I make can change the expression of those genes, and that's a term called epigenetics, which has been studied a lot, especially in life science.
So can your labs come back with a normal limit and then have this test and you'll get a different result from?
So tell me more. What do you mean when you?
Well, are there things that you miss from normal blood, you know, what they run? And then you take this test though, and your doctor is gonna send you out the door and say, you're great.
Yeah.
And then you take this test and like you're retaining more CO2 or,
Sure.
you know, are those things gonna show up in blood tests? So, I mean, are you getting like a false sense of security when the doc says, go out the door, you're fine?
Yeah.
And then they find you,
Yeah.
and you try, and they do this test, but the test is showing all these areas
Yeah.
that need improvement.
Yes, I think the two can coexist. Yeah, and I don't mean to be like an alarmist, but I think that like the breathing thing you bring up, I think is a valid point because there's no real test. I mean, yeah, we could do what's called an ABG on somebody, which is an arterial blood gas. But usually we're doing that in the hospital setting, in the ER. Somebody comes in with COPD and they're in respiratory distress and failure, and so we're not doing ABGs on people normally. So the best way that we know whether you're retaining is yes to do PNOE, because there's no other lab that's going to correlate with that. Are there times where somebody can have a normal lipid panel, let's say, or normal blood pressure, and then their cardiac function is probably suboptimal? Yeah, I've got a normal blood pressure. I don't have high cholesterol, but my heart function, I'm not crushing it. I'm like at 70-some, 60-some, 70%, and I gotta get to 100. I'm kidding. I don't think you can, but right. So yeah, I think the labs is one measure, but I don't think it's the whole story, right? That's why we've got people, you know, with normal labs, or we get their labs normal with medication, and then we got 900 jumbo jets falling out of the sky every year, right? I just think we're missing something. Yeah, I think we're missing something. Yeah, and I'm not trying to be an alarmist, but I think traditional healthcare is reactionary, right? We're waiting for you to get a disease, and then we're like, oh, here's your med, but we're not changing people's outcome. We're not saving lives doing it. So.
And they are just treating you if you're dying.
What's that?
Seriously, they are just treating you if you are dying, because they will send you home whenever you have with Tylenol or Advil. It's just crazy.
Truly, we are not, our healthcare system is a little flawed, for sure. For everybody, patients, physicians, but we don't want to go down that rabbit hole tonight. Yeah, no doubt. Yeah. Any other questions I can answer? Okay. And again, if you don't want for me to contact you, just put a little blip on your name and just make sure I have an email and a phone number, please. And then I will make my rounds and get everybody scheduled and to do your tests for you.
I need a package for 2.
You need a package for 2? You got it.
A bundle. Do you have a bundle?
Family rate.
Yeah, we should do it now.
Where's your office?
I can show it to you.